Hi, I'm Dr. Daniel Cannone, and I am a pediatric hematology, oncology, and pediatric palliative care and hospice physician. I went through 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of medical school, did 3 years of pediatric residency, followed by 3 years of hematology and oncology fellowship, followed by 1 year of pediatric palliative care fellowship. Typical day for me, I'm basically almost 100% palliative care at this point, so I generally will do inpatient service. We're primarily a consulting team. Usually my day consists of joining other primary teams for rounds and listening to what's been going on with my patients. We see patients that have pain and symptom management needs, as well as patients that are hospice or end of life. So we will see about 30% of our patients come from the hematology oncology clinic, and then about another 30 to 40% come from our pediatric intensive care unit. Probably about 10% come from our neonatal intensive care unit, and then about another 20% come from the general peds inpatient floor. In general, we mainly see pain and symptom management consults, but we also will see a good number of patients that are needing to have care at the end of life or need to start planning their end of life care. I went into this field because I initially was interested in doing family medicine as a primary career when I was in medical school, but then I switched tracks and decided I wanted to do pediatrics. Along the way, I fell in love with the patients that we see in the oncology world. I actually did a 2-week camp down in Florida for kids with chronic or life-threatening diseases, and I fell in love with all of the kiddos with cancer, with sickle cell, with hemophilia, and I really was very interested in taking care of those patients. During my residency, I did a rotation on palliative care, but had been interested in palliative and hospice care since I was a teenager, and I lost several friends to automobile accidents or cancer in the span of about 2 years. And was very interested in helping other young people to deal with death and dying in a loving manner, in a way that I had experienced myself, and I had been walked through all the different phases of grieving. So I wanted to be able to help other people to walk through those stages of grieving. The rotation that I did for palliative care and hospice care was on the adult side. But when I was doing my fellowship for pediatric hematology and oncology, I did see that there was a big need for palliative care in pediatrics, especially when it came to patients who had some kind of a terminal cancer. And a lot of the times we find that patients and their families are not given the opportunity to properly prepare for what is sometimes inevitable. And I really felt like there was a big need there, and that I was somebody that could help to fill that need. And I really enjoyed my fellowship in pediatric palliative care. I trained at St. Jude and Le Bonheur hospitals in Memphis, Tennessee, and I would not have changed that for the world. What courses in college or high school did I find most beneficial in preparing me for my current career? I have to be honest, in preparing for hematology, oncology, and palliative care, I would say, honestly, it probably was the non-medicine courses that have prepared me the most for this field, and really it was more of the humanities and language arts. I was an English minor, and I learned a lot of Spanish, both in high school and in college. And then I also did some trips to Mexico and taught English as a second language. So I would say those were the ones that actually prepared me more for a career in medicine, where communication is so vitally important. And then in my particular field in palliative care, communication is 90% of what I do. I communicate with my colleagues, I communicate with my patients and their families, and having the ability to communicate well, both in written form and in just speaking, is an asset to this particular field. I would say taking foreign language courses oddly helps you to be more, I'm not sure if the word is sympathetic, but to understand a little bit more about other cultures, and to, in a very diverse country like the United States, I feel like any way that you can help to prepare yourself to be more ready to provide medical care to patients from diverse backgrounds is key. So I definitely would recommend either doing intercultural studies or language courses, or to go on trips to other countries, or to places where English is not the primary language. Extracurricular activities. Oh boy. Um, so back in college, I actually volunteered at a after school program for kids who were back in probably the 80s or 90s, would have been considered latchkey kids, for kids that needed after school care for parents who were working. And we dealt with a lot of kids with emotional problems or behavioral problems, and that, I think, really prepared me for kind of the realities of the world of pediatrics. Is that there's a lot of needs out there when it comes to kids that have been neglected, or kids that have emotional problems that um, maybe families aren't well equipped to deal with. In college, I did participate in the biology club. I was the biology club president for a year, and I have to say that that was good leadership experience for me. And then once I went into medical school, I was involved with the pediatrics group, and then I also was very involved with the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics, throughout residency and fellowship. The American Academy of Pediatrics, if you get involved on the student or the learner level, has a lot of opportunities for being a representative for your particular program or for your school. And it can be very helpful in getting you connected to other people, and helping you to form those connections and then to learn from other people. And it also is good because there's a lot of opportunities to do advocacy on a local and a national level that organizations like the American Academy of Pediatrics can help hook you into, that you probably wouldn't otherwise be involved with. Other extracurricular activities that I got involved with, I went on several international trips. We were very lucky that the medical school that I went to, had several different international sites that they would travel to on an annual or several times a year basis. And one of those sites was in El Salvador, so I traveled there twice when I was in medical school. And then in residency, I traveled to Ghana on a research trip. And I think what's very helpful about those trips is to see that the world is so much bigger than we ever knew it was, and that people in other nations don't necessarily need us to come to them with medicine, with knowledge. We need them, and I think that was the biggest lesson I learned from going to Ghana. Was I grew up in a very closed-minded family that thought that all of Africa was a nation or a continent that was backward and needy and not civilized and not advanced. And I, I highly encourage anyone who grew up with that kind of a background to go and see Africa for yourself, because I think the way that it opened my mind and my experiences to new possibilities and new ways of thinking was incredible. We went there to be research collaborators with researchers at a university in Ghana who were doing research very similar to what we were doing, and it was incredible to see the technology and the advancements that were being done there. That I, it just boggles the mind that us as people in America are so unaware of what's going on elsewhere in the world. So if I had to give a recommendation for things that you should do during your medical training, that would be one of them, is to see how medicine is practiced in other parts of the world, um, just to teach yourself how wildly diverse the world can be. How did you maintain focus to study, prepare for your exams with other coursework in your professional school? Okay. Um, I, I will answer this question in two parts. The first part, in medical school, I I probably had no clue what I was doing. And I think even at this point, if I went back and I had to do medical school over again, I probably still would not know what I was doing. And I think the fact is that the the learning curve from college to medical school is so steep, um, and I think um, the amount of information that you are presented with and the format in which you are presented it is so wildly and vastly different than anything that you've experienced before. I would say in medical school, I think a lot of it was by getting into study groups with people that I knew and trusted and being able to keep each other accountable. Um, with the caveat that I learned in college, excuse me, I learned in college that you cannot always rely on the determination and study skills of those around you to get you through. On the flip side, outside of medical school, I would say my determination was, or my studies were a lot more determined by my own personal motivation, and a lot of it was I did a lot of introspection, and I did some testing to see what were the ways that I worked best, and I capitalized on those, and I just made sure that those were the ways that I was learning. And I also was intentional in carving out time. I knew I wasn't the best test taker in the world, and so I knew that I had to do things in order to prepare myself well. So I had to carve out time on a daily basis to say, this is my time, this is my study time, and on the weekends to say, these hours are the ones that I study in. Um, and to say that I'm going to do the very best that I can and um, target the skills that I know that I have in order to study. My personal area of expertise and research and interest is in communication. When I was in New York, I did a 2-year, 8-week communication course with oncology trainees. Studied it rigorously, used um, uh, standard methods for studying education and communication, and I'm hoping to continue that work right now. My goals or my what I'm hoping to do in my work is to study how we teach, um, what are the ways that we are doing things wrong when we're teaching, how can we make them better. And my primary focus is on communication and how do we teach our learners to be better communicators or good communicators, and are the methods that we're using successful. My favorite method for teaching communication is practicing it and being able to work in a simulation environment. And so what I'm hoping to be able to do is to replicate a little bit of what I did when I was in fellowship, and use a simulation center with standardized patients or actors to teach residents and fellows better communication skills. Key points to take away from this video. I think for me, the biggest takeaways are, don't just be good at one thing. Medicine is a broad field, and we're living in the 21st century, and the possibilities are endless. Go outside of your realm of knowledge and experience and learn something different. My something different was language arts and communication, but for everybody it's different.